Thank you so much. I had the daunting task of trying to create a good atmosphere in this room with an opening line of "Welcome to the world of ISIS." It's not as daunting though as to do research about ISIS. I have spent the last 2 years of my life researching daily, basically, the official output and propaganda that comes out of ISIS. So I will try to explain a few dimensions of this propaganda. And a lot of the stories that comes out of ISIS media industry, because it is a media industry, is about storytelling, stories, narratives about the caliphate, the self-declared caliphate, and about what it means to be a jihadist. And I will begin by telling a story of the violent green man. The violent green man is a nickname for a rather petty criminal from Jordan in the 80s and 90s, who later became the inspirational ideologist for ISIS. And that is Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. I'm sure you're quite familiar with him. He later became the leader of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, who turned out to be the Islamic State as we know it. And his nickname, the Green Man, came from how his friends described him, because when he had his rather petty criminal life in the beginning, in his younger age, he wasn't very religious. He lived the life of like a gang member and a gang leader, but he covered his upper body, most of his upper body, in green tattoos. So his friends refer to him as the Green Man. But when Colin Powell addressed the UN in 2003, he mentioned al-Zarqawi's name 21 times. That made him sort of the international poster boy of Islamic extremism. And that position that he got, much due to that address, was used by Al-Qaeda, who made him the leader of Al-Qaeda in Iraq. And he was killed in 2006, but his vision about a grand caliphate, a Muslim state that would erase the borders that were drawn by France and Britain after the First World War, and he wanted to create this Muslim nation, Muslim state that would sort of conquer and be a place for all Muslims to live in. And what he did, I mean, if the US invasion in Iraq in 2003 toppled the government, what al-Zarqawi did was to divide the country between Shias and Sunnis. Created a sectarian war that made the Shia Muslims the #1 enemy for al-Zarqawi and later on also for the Islamic State. He was not only the ideological sort of inspiration, he was also the inspiration in terms of using media. He realized the power of media. And as you can see behind me, there is an infamous video where al-Zarqawi supposedly is the man in the middle, and he beheads the US contractor, Nicholas Berg. This is 2004, and this is the first real sort of recognition of the type of videos that ISIS produces today. What ISIS has done in their propaganda is to amplify that and to fictionalize the violence much more than what al-Zarqawi did. As you can see here, especially to the right, in these very torturous and horrific videos, they are often shot with at least 5 or 6 cameras, and then they are edited together later on, creating a sort of fiction out of reality that distances the audience from the victim. That sort of dehumanizes the victim, so we don't really feel as much when we see them being tortured in a very horrific way. And these videos are very recognizable, and they use, Islamic State today use the media infrastructure very extensively to spread as much as they can. This is a screenshot from one of the official forums that I daily check. And this is just the number of links for one video where they put up on different servers and platforms and websites for one single video. You can choose the quality of the video, you can choose whether you download it or just stream it. There are very, very many choices. And those in turn are then spread by tens of thousands of Twitter accounts that are connected somewhat to ISIS. So that gives us an idea of the magnitude of the production. So it's not really strange that when we read the newspapers about ISIS, what we read about is this. These type of violent videos, very gruesome and very recognizable. And that dominates the Western discourse about what ISIS actually is, and it sort of shapes our perception of what ISIS is. But if we go beyond that, the matter of fact, there was a study last year that showed that out of the total output of Islamic State propaganda during 1 or 2 months, I can't really remember, the percentage of this type of violence was 3%. So what is the rest? It's actually a lot of other narratives. The brutality aspects are just a small percentage of the entire propaganda industry. And I would like to show you one side, and it's a clip of about 1 minute or so. One side that is quite dominant in the propaganda.
My name is Abu Muslim. I'm your brother in Islam here in Syria. I originally come from Canada.
يا فوز من نال الشهادة صادقا تمحى الذنوب إذا الدماء تقطروا وإذا الزهور تعطرت.
Before Islam, I was like any other regular Canadian. I watched hockey. I went to the cottage in the summertime. I loved to fish. I wanted to go hunting. I liked outdoors. I liked sports.
وتعمر ولهم منازل في الجنان وصحبة ومعين خيرات يزيد ويكثر.
So I was like your everyday regular Canadian before Islam. Then alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided me from the darkness of kufr to the light of iman, to Islam.
ولا في فتنة بالقبر لا لن يسألوا أو يقهروا ما مات من.
Before I come here to Syria, I had money, I had a family, I had good friends, I had colleagues. You know, I worked as a street janitor. I made over $2,000 a month at this job. It was a very good job. It was a very good job. And you know, even though I wasn't rich beyond my wildest imaginations, you know, I was making it. It was good. And you know, I always had family to support me, and I had friends to support me. So it's not like I was some social outcast. It wasn't like I was some anarchist or somebody who just wants to destroy the world and kill everybody. No, I was a regular person. And you know, mujahideen are regular people too.
Are regular people too. I was not a social outcast that wanted to kill everybody. This is the most dominant message to attract foreign recruiters to the Islamic State, and has been for almost 2 years now. That has changed a bit because they are, as you know, suffering a lot of territorial losses. So a war narrative has started to emerge, like being also quite dominant. But this is maybe the most evident one. These type of pictures, the photo stories and different type of propaganda pictures coming out of ISIS, I believe this is also extremely important. To show a peaceful and harmonic and functional state. The caliphate, the physical space of the caliphate is really important to keep for them because it gets amplified in the media messaging. So this type, to see almost paradise-like pictures, to see children playing, being happy, and as you can see, also a very professional composition of the visual imagery. A peaceful life of fathers taking care of their children as well, playing together. And the Islamic State are running a welfare state, which means that they taxate the populations they control, And in exchange, the populations get schools for the children, but also, in this case, healthcare. So these are just images from the propaganda material that I have went through. So they have a story about the functioning healthcare system. And they report monthly, basically, how many surgeries have been made, how many births have been made. And this is important also from a gender perspective, because working within their healthcare system or within their schools is something that they try to appeal women to join the Islamic State for, because there they can fill like an important function. They can have a significance by helping others. You see images of a flourishing markets. You see images of agriculture and crops, harvesting, everything to try to convince people that this is a functioning state where you can live in harmony. So what they try to do is to alternate the perception of ISIS, like the Western narratives of ISIS. They create a competitive system of meaning, basically. And on the other side of the spectrum, an important narrative has for long been the heroism of being a fighter. Look at this short clip from a music video.
For the sake of Allah, we will march to the gates of the paradise where our maidens await. We are men that love death just as you love the night. We're the soldiers that fight in the day and the night. We're the soldiers that fight in the day and the night. Going forth, preparing to roll.
And I regret to say, but this is basically like a Eurovision song. It gets stuck in my head after I've seen it a few times. And it's really catchy. And it, as you say, sort of portrays these fighters as being heroes. They made terrorism look cool in a certain sense, in comparison to previous groups. The final narrative that I would like to bring up is the depiction of children in the propaganda. That has increased during the last year, especially during the last 6 months. They are using children in a variety of narratives, not only in, as you can see here, social life, in training camps to become future jihadist warriors, but unfortunately also as executioners. Which makes it, especially, I don't know if it's a difference, but I'm a father, I have a daughter that is 12, and it's really hard for me to watch when kids her age beheads a grown man. It's really horrific and it's really hard to comprehend. But as I said, their techniques of using the media and the techniques of fictionalizing a very true violence is quite skillful, so it sort of distances me from the victim. But children are being used, and that is being used because they really want to show that even if we suffer militarily, we still have a future. We have a future generation of jihadist warriors that will continue our fight and will spread our ideology. What do we do about this? How can we actually counter this? Let me illustrate it by the story of the man who weeps. And that refers to the same green man, the al-Zarqawi I told about earlier. Because the more devoted he got into a specific ideology, a radical Salafist jihadist ideology, the more he became expressive with his emotions, the more devoted he became into something. He was often being seen crying during prayer, for instance. And it even got to that point that when he was in prison, at the peak of his radicalization process, sort of, he smuggled in a razor blade in prison and started peeling off his tattoos from his body. Because he was so devoted into something. And it's not as simple to say that it's just a matter of religion. But it is a criminal behavior that goes not only for al-Zarqawi, but for many people, as we have seen during the last summer, individuals who conduct attacks who are basically more or less successful criminals, but they find an excuse in the ideological framework of ISIS that sort of justifies their behavior. And that is also what al-Zarqawi did. He found an excuse and he found a sort of framework that sort of, it sort of justified his actions and his ideologies. And I believe that the violent green man is much easier to counter than the man who weeps. Those who are so into something, are so devoted into something, are much harder to get to. There have been some successful, more or less successful campaigns to try to counter this. Not in My Name is one example of a British campaign that young British Muslims spoke out in different type of videos about how their faith and their religion had been hijacked. This proved quite successful in terms of spread, but I think we have greater challenges. Knowing all this about ISIS and knowing the different dimensions of their propaganda, I think that we need much more to work cross-disciplinary between political efforts, financial, cultural, social, academic efforts, to work more in combination with each other and cooperate. Because I want to take you into my home office. When I sit and watch for 2 years this type of material, it sort of becomes like a bubble. You enter this world of brutal violence, but of, as I showed before, also very paradise-like pictures. And I'm on this side of the ideological spectra. Imagine those who are drawn into this propaganda, who are more closer to ISIS form and perspective of the world. It is extremely powerful. I have had several, almost I would say mental breakdowns, but I have emotional breakdowns watching this, because it's really hard to comprehend for me. But I sit there and you sort of become one with this. It is an extremely strange experience, actually. And I think we need to know more about the individual experience of using this type of mediated propaganda. We don't really know much about how the effect of the individual this propaganda actually has. So I think there is a lot of effort that needs to be made in more like anthropological studies, in like deep interviews with people who are closer to this than I will ever be. Thank you.